Hello and welcome back to the Weaponize Body Podcast. As always, this is Dr. Ryan Hewitt coming to you with the latest in performance, health, and recovery. And today we're going to talk about a compound that gets a lot of bad rap when it comes to cigarettes and cancer and addiction, because those things are no bueno. But in reality, has a completely different story when you separate it from the smoking, which is nicotine. So we're not talking about cigarettes. We're not talking about vaping, those types of things, cigars. Clearly, those things have a destructive delivery method. But pure nicotine, when it's isolated, what it actually can do for you is increase your performance, improve focus, motivation, recovery, brain chemistry, and potentially has some long-term health benefits. Because the truth most people miss is that nicotine isn't necessarily the villain, but the delivery methods are. So what I want to hit on today is, information about this nootropic called nicotine. We're going to talk about pros, cons, what research actually says, when it can help and when it hurts, better alternatives, and a little bit about the science where it hasn't caught up yet. So let's get into it. So let's talk about what nicotine actually is, so we have some clarity of where we're starting from. So nicotine is something called a cholinergic stimulant. So it binds to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. If you heard of acetylcholine, it's a neurotransmitter that your body makes that's required for all neurosynapses in your body. In other words, like contraction of your muscles and, your organ function, etc. And it really, what it does is three major things. Number one, it can increase dopamine. Number two, it can enhance norepinephrine, which is adrenaline. And number three is it enhances acetylcholine signaling, right? So translation of this, what it does is it sharpens things like focus, reaction time, alertness, and drive, which is why, little do you know, for decades, individuals like soldiers, surgeons, pilots, athletes, executives have all been using nicotine for just these things. So, for performance, essentially. So number two, let's talk about performance benefits, because really that's what this podcast is all about, is to bring you the latest when it comes to performance, health, and recovery in a safe manner. So let's talk about where nicotine actually really shines. Number one is the focus and cognitive output. Nicotine can improve things like working memory, attention span, and task performance. So it's very useful for things like long blocks of work, strategic thinking, or high pressure decision making. This is something that I've experimented with in 2025. I made the mistake of using it too often, though, and I found myself in a little addiction cycle with it. So we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls when it comes to nicotine in a minute. But what I've found is that it helped with my focus tremendously when I was needing to focus on something like creative work, or if I had some task-oriented things that I need to do to prepare for. Focus. It sharpens your focus when you're trying to learn something. So if you're reading a book, especially information, and it helps with like motivation and drive. And this is a lot to do with the dopamine release. So it makes you more willingness, or it gives you more willingness to engage. It has less resistance to getting started. So if you're a procrastinator, nicotine can help. It helps you feel locked in, is the best way I could put it. The third thing is reaction time. So it does improve faster reaction speed, improving vigilance and like error detection. So this is like high performance occupations or athletes. This is really where they're using it. So like combat sports, racing, tactical shooting, high speed athletics, right? One other thing you may have heard of too is that nicotine can help control appetite. So it suppresses hunger signals. So which isn't ideal for long-term health, right? But explains often why it's used in like weight cut phases. Bodybuilders will use this, contest preps, and then military rations. So part of the reason we saw so many smokers in all of those like World War II and Vietnam, videos and movies and things like that, a lot of them were smoking at that point. I'm sure there's a lot of other stories behind why that occurred. Get them hooked so when they come back, they continue to be customers, but also because it does curb appetite. Let's talk about some health and recovery realities when it comes to nicotine, though, because it's not neutral, of course. Like any compounds, any chemicals, too much of anything is not a good thing. So let's talk about what nicotine does not do. So number one, here's what a lot of people think when we say nicotine is they think cancer. Nicotine has not been shown to cause cancer. Nicotine does not create arterial disease or like tar issues in your lungs and things like that, or produce like carbon monoxide. So those come from like smoke combustion, not nicotine. However, nicotine, because of its acetylcholinergic effects, it does increase heart rate and it increases blood pressure by activating the sympathetic nervous system. So you can imagine like alertness and focus and things like that. You're at heightened physiological states. You're going to have constriction of your arteries, your arterial walls. You're going to have increases in your blood pressure slightly. And what it means is it's a stimulant, right? So it's not recovery friendly if it's overused, and it can interfere with sleep quality because of that. And I've discovered this. So using nicotine too late in the day, if you measure your HRV and your resting heart rate, it can increase your heart rate and screw up your sleep cycles. So obviously it has recovery impacts then, right? So if you use it too late in the day, it can reduce deep sleep and it can blunt things like your parasympathetic rebound, which is like your rest and repair and relaxation states, and delay muscular recovery because of it. So this is where people start to screw it up, as I have. They use nicotine like caffeine, right? So they wonder why they're like wired and tired. It's because it can be overused if not timed and strategically used, right? So the real cons, number one is there is a dependency risk with nicotine. Of course, as we know, it's addictive. So it is habit forming. It's not necessarily like as destructive as other habit forming chemicals such as alcohol or opiates or things like that. Because your brain does adapt quickly, right? So your baseline dopamine can drop when you don't have it. And the thought process or the feeling is like, I don't feel normal without it. That's a massive red flag, right? If you feel like you cannot operate appropriately without it, then you know you're at a dependence risk. Number two, the cardiovascular load can be an issue. So chronic heavy use, and we see this too with these crazy amounts of milligrams of of nicotine that we're seeing in these deliverables, like pouches. 6, 8, 10 milligrams. You're doing multiple of those a day. You're getting a shit ton because too much nicotine is toxic. It's fatal. So there's not too many people getting to that point when it comes to nicotine. You'll feel very ill if you do that. But what happens is if you use it heavily, it can increase arterial stiffness. What that means is it restricts blood flow and it can elevate your resting heart rate and stress the nervous system, which is no bueno when it comes to, again, recovery, rest, repair, relaxation, reproduction, rest, digest, things like that. Especially if you're somebody already at risk, if you already have high blood pressure, if you're already at risk for things like arrhythmias, or anxiety disorders, for example, nicotine might not be a very good idea for you. Sort of like some people that already carry just like a really high, stress load, or they're already somebody who's sort of very wired naturally, adding a dose of caffeine to people like that can can be not a good idea. Nicotine can have similar effects. Now, the third problem too is that chronic nicotine use can create tolerance, right? So it can start with feeling like, oh my God, I need this to focus, to like, I need this to feel normal, like I said. So that's the line you don't want to cross. I think this is a line that too many of us cross when it comes to caffeine or coffee. I like to say that I don't drink coffee in the morning because of the dependency to feel normal, because I try to feel really great when I wake up in the morning anyway. Without it, but I do really enjoy it. So I enjoy the taste. I enjoy, using it. Nicotine, on the other hand, it's one of those things. It's like, it's not really you're enjoying it for the taste. You're enjoying it for the benefit, right? So trying to use it sparingly and not crossing the line of using it to feel normal. What research is showing, or what the modern consensus is agreeing upon when it comes to nicotine, it is showing promise in actual neuroprotection. So it can be neurologically protective when used accordingly. So we're starting to see it used in Parkinson's disease research, Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. We're seeing it in like ADHD, symptom management, depression modulation. So you see how the neurochemistry is being studied when it comes to the effect of, nicotine specifically, and its acetylcholinergic influence, right? But the medical community is extremely cautious, as they should be, because of the things I touched on already, right? Like addiction potential, which can complicate the study trials. Long-term cardiovascular impact isn't really understood greatly. The delivery methods, of course, skew the outcomes. So if there's no consistency and the delivery methods, right? So the science is moving towards this conclusion, though, that nicotine may be therapeutically useful, but it has to be fairly low dose. Number two, it has to be strategic of when you use it. It should be cycled intelligently and never paired with smoking. So pretty commonsensical stuff. Sounds like how we should use, most nootropic or most, chemicals that, when chronically overused could cause physiological dependence or health issues. So you have to be very disciplined when you use it. Now, the best ways to use it without abusing it. So I'm not here, okay, I'll say this with a disclaimer. I'm not here advocating for nicotine or like selling anybody on nicotine to start like a nicotine habit. But let's say you're already using it. You're already dabbling in it. You're already using pouches and things like that. So here's some principles, okay? These aren't, instructions. These are kind of like my rules now when I'm using it. So number one, use it as a tool, not a crutch, okay? So have times when you're allowing yourself to use nicotine when it's time to like focus, get shit done, hammer out some creative work, when you're running into like roadblocks of procrastination. Yeah, those are times where it's like, okay, I need a little bit of help to really get zoned in and focused. Number two, never combine with smoking, ever. All right. There's never going to be a time where smoking is going to be a better delivery method or good for you at all. Whether that's cigars, whether that's vaping, whether that's cigarettes, none of it is good. Okay. Enough said. We don't need to explain that. Number three, and this is a rule that I figured out the hard way, is never use it late in the day. I think nobody's talking about this because we don't realize it's a stimulant. It's something that causes an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. For the same reasons you don't eat, late in the day, and you don't use caffeine late in the day. You don't use nicotine late in the day because it'll fuck up your sleep, right? It will mess with your recovery. And if you're somebody who cares about that, like cut your use off, similar to when you'd cut off use of things like caffeine. So early afternoon, preferably you're not using it past, let's say 1, 2, 3 p.m. type of thing. I cut off my caffeine use before noon, Preferably, I'm just by 9 a.m. Nicotine use, I try to cut by like 2, 3 p.m. So you never want to use it late in the day. Number 4 is cycle off of it regularly. This is just to make sure you're not building a dependency, making sure that you're not, using it inappropriately and, starting to make it a habit. I don't know about you, but I don't like to be controlled by anything, whether it's alcohol, nicotine, caffeine. There's nothing that I want to like steal from my energy because I'm physiologically, physically, or psychologically addicted to it. Nicotine is a bit of a risky chemical when it comes to that. So cycle off of it regularly, showing yourself that you can get off of it and that you don't need it to function normally. Number 5 is never stack it with high anxiety states. So if you are having like a really stressful, really rough week, this is not a good time to take more more nicotine. It's a better idea to actually cut it back a little bit. And you can do this by watching things like your sleep and your heart rate and your recovery and whatnot. So if nicotine's improving things like your output without disrupting your sleep, without increasing your irritability, and you're not dependent on it, you're probably using it right. But if it starts to replace discipline, if you find yourself, saying I need it, it masks, the burnout that you're burning both ends of the candle, and it's screwing up your sleep, and it's like helping you regulate your emotions. That's when you're probably using it wrong. So those are just some signs to watch for. Where most research is needed going forward when it comes to nicotine is we need better. I feel like we say this about everything, but we need better long-term data, right? Especially long-term data outcomes when it comes to cardiovascular outcomes with nicotine. Its role in like neurodegenerative disease prevention, which seems pretty exciting. The microdose or therapeutic use, same thing when it comes to things like psilocybin, nicotine, certain peptides, right? What are some microdosing or therapeutic benefits? Optimal cycling strategies, right? Interaction with hormones, such as like testosterone and cortisol, and the effects on heart rate variability, and the effects on high performance athletes. I think these are really interesting topics that I'd love to see more long-term research on. Because right now we have like short-term clarity with long-term question marks. So if you're not into the nicotine thing and you're looking for, better focus, nicotine's not the only option. So safer long-term tools that I can tell you about are number 1, caffeine with L-theanine. So both give you smooth alertness without those anxiety spikes, right? Most of us have experience with caffeine. L-theanine is another compound that's kind of interesting. So both are, very, very easily, readily available. And again, you want to be smart with these things too. But generally, there's not as much, you could say that like fallout from use as far as like dependency and like withdrawal symptoms and all that kind of stuff. It just gives you the kind of that smooth alertness. You know what that feels like, getting that little caffeine buzz on without those anxiety spikes. Although there are some people that cannot do coffee because of, the acetylcholinergic, anxiety effects they get from it. So number 2, if you've heard of alpha GPC, the reason you hear of alpha GPC as like a nootropic is because it's a precursor to acetylcholine. Okay. Interesting thing is it's actually prescriptive in Europe, but legal in the US. So food for thought. So that one increases your acetylcholine naturally. Rhodiola it improves fatigue resistance and stress resilience. I haven't messed with that one personally. I have no experience with it, but this is what it says about it. Creatine, lots of experience with this one. Not just with muscle. You'll see a lot of talk about creatine and the neurological benefits, right? So improving cognitive performance. So creatine is a really, I think, easy supplement to get, cheap, just plain old creatine monohydrate. It's not just for muscle, for brain health as well. Now, the obvious one, sleep optimization. It's the ultimate cognitive enhancer and nootropic that nobody wants to commit to. Over 70% of Americans, for example, have some sort of sleep issue or less than optimized sleep problems. I've done podcasts on this. Yes, number one, before you, I love the saying is that don't step over dollars to pick up dimes. People in history used nicotine. Strategically though, right? So it wasn't always like it was used as a tool and not a lifestyle, right? So, so just some final takes on nicotine. It's not evil. The more I looked into it, actually, the more I sort of, became more okay with it. But it's powerful. I have more respect for it now. And I think power without discipline becomes destruction with a lot of things. You can overdo it, anything, right? You can overdo water. You can overdo exercise. You can overdo, eating healthy food. Of course, you can overdo something that has benefits, especially like nicotine, because it does have addictive properties, right? So power with discipline, though, becomes a weapon. So if you use it intelligently, right, it can help you actually increase things like performance, sharpen your focus, your execution. But it does, and it can hijack things like dopamine. Anytime you hear that, you want to be weary, because it can, create dependency. It wrecks your recovery if it's overdone, and in masks burnout. So if you want to be weaponized, which is my goal for anybody who listens to this podcast, that you're able to take some benefit each week from some of the things that I share. And you want to build, eliteness, capacity, right? Nicotine can be something that can help sharpen the blade, but you still have to forge the sword. You never want to forget about, like I said before, like if you're using this for like recovery and focus and things like that, and you're not focused on like optimizing your sleep, you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. So we're talking like the 1% of things that you can, start to experiment with to help your performance, health, and recovery. You still have to forge the sword, in other words, right? You still have to focus on like the 5 levers: managing your stress levels, getting proper sleep, training, strength training, especially eating enough protein and getting a protein whole food, based diet. And of course, making sure that you are drinking enough water. So listen, if this episode helped you rethink nicotine, share it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like weekly performance breakdowns on things like metabolic, movement, and mindset health, subscribe to the Weaponized Body, give it a share, leave a review. I need some more reviews on there. Please let me know what you think. And I appreciate you guys listening as always. So I will see you guys next week.